Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first international meeting of e-DAU, as Quazi is pronouncing it. And I think that's okay, right? Because we say email, so we say e-DAU. In Portuguese would be e-DAU, but we can say e-DAU, no problem. Welcome you all. I could say good morning from Brazil, but some of you, I have to say good afternoon, and some of you have to say good evening, because we've arranged this meeting at 9 a.m. Brazil, which is 1 p.m. in Scotland, and 9 p.m. in Tokyo, where Hironanjo is.
Yes,
and
yes.
For anyone watching,
Japanese word to say for all the way.
Is there a Japanese word for that? Konnichiwa. Okay, then konnichiwa, everyone. And
but right should be konbanwa, because it's a night in Japan.
Konbawa.
Konbanwa, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to stick to English just so I don't mispronounce anything. But konbawa would be my try on that one. Welcome you all. e-DAU, as some of you already know, is a collaborative team of designers, architects, and urbanists, in addition to members from other related professions who work within an interdisciplinary network. It's more than 100 members are professionals, and in many cases researchers and professors active in Brazil, where the network was born, and abroad as well. In, I think it's more than 18 countries now. I think we're around 21, but Bruno can correct me afterwards.
Yeah.
Our mission is to point to paths to sustainability in its several expressions, in several translations, which may improve the quality of urban life in view of the complex and multidisciplinary problems of contemporary society through design, architecture, and urbanism. The idea of e-DAU is to be innovative in planning and design, also regarding participation in national and international networks. Today's talk we've called e-DAU debates or e-DAU meetings. We haven't settled in a name for that, but is the seminar from Quazi Zaman, and if I mispronounce it, please correct me. But it's Dr. Quazi Zaman will discuss border urbanism. He's currently investigating the discourse of urbanism at borders and its connections to architecture and urban design disciplines by partnering with a team of 35 global academics and researchers interested in collaboration. He has been in research and teaching since 1990, focusing on the urban studies, both emerging and established theories in the urban context. Some of the main themes addressed are new urbanism, regionalism and regeneration, marginalization, spatial justice, and a healthy city by urban design. Besides his teaching career, he has extensive architectural and urban design consultancy experience in Hong Kong and Bangladesh. e-DAU has been promoting lives and discussions throughout the last year. We have several debates in Portuguese in YouTube. You can access YouTube of e-DAU. And if you don't speak Portuguese, I believe YouTube can help you with subtitles translated automatically. For this meeting, we ask that the cameras stay on during the meeting so the lecturer can see the audience. Let us be careful to only open our microphones when needed, and feel free to send commentaries and questions via chat. Have a great meeting. Quazi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, César. Thank you, César. Just I want to confirm whether you can hear me, and also
yes.
I want to kind of share my screen, which is the PowerPoint presentation.
All right. We can see you and see the screen.
So before I go about kind of talking about the border urbanism, I must thank Bruno, César, Wilfredo. Bruno has been my 23 years kind of back friends while I was in Hong Kong, and I still cherish the same memory. Recently, I got in touch with Bruno because of e-DAU, and e-DAU is a fantastic initiative, which I'm now part of e-DAU as an international director in Scotland. And my kind of a challenge is just to give you more and more international director to expand and cover the rest of the world. This is my interest. But I think what I would kind of give you the background that I'm an architect, graduated from Bangladesh, but I moved out to do my higher studies. I spent 10 years in Hong Kong, went back again for teaching for 5 years. And then my journey kind of was a kind of a setting myself free to go to States and come to Scotland in 2008. So my research of global urbanism is very premature, I must say. It's very new, because I'm always interested about city, people, urbanism, and its environmental and social justice. I work with children under called the Help Kids, Healthier Environmental Life Planning for Kids. And I see the urban transformation through the eyes of children. I've got my small kids, and I ask and I learn many things from there. And that's the starting of my presentation of urbanism and border. It reminds me of 5 years back when my little son is now 10 years old, asked me while I was traveling to many European cities together with him and my family. And when we landed, he said, "Is it a different planet?" Then I had to kind of show the global kind of a world, and then I put him into the context of the map, that this is where we are, where we have been. But he looked at the globe and pointed to that, well, I traveled, but I don't think that I traveled and in the same planet, because why do we have to kind of travel and cross another kind of a interface? So this gives me an idea, like 5 years ago, like to show them that this is how the structure of geographical and political structure grew from one kind of a planet. And this is what the starting point of thinking, that what do we have in terms of separation, and what that separation means to us as a kind of a different discipline, architecture, urbanism. So I looked at many typologies from 7 and then down to 77 at the moment. And it's always kind of evolving. New borders will come, old borders will dissipate. So it is a kind of natural process. So if you look at the statistics, which is the border which is shared by bilateral two countries, and sometimes the countries are not friendly, sometimes they are enemy, sometimes they have conflict. The conflict may rise to many issues. So I'll not go into details, but I want to kind of set your focus on something which we can actually learn as architects and urban designer and planner. So if you look at the typology of international border, which is kind of a very interesting arrays of structure. Sometimes it's a natural division, sometimes it's a man-made, sometimes it is a kind of a very complex, like Mexico and USA, very complex, but it's a very interesting debate on the border. And the border actually gives some kind of a question within the mind of new generation. What is it? Because we are connected, very connected throughout the whole world, which is kind of a one tip of a finger. You can actually connect to somebody living in South America. So why there is such a division? So this is the fact, and this is the fact of life that has been created through generations and through history. Borders are growing, and it will grow or it will diminish depending on how our attitude to the border and the differences would be. So we are more connected at the moment. It's the testament, the proof is how we connected throughout the whole world through this e-DAU. But we are not connected physically. But we don't want to debate on why we are not connected, but how we can actually take that as a knowledge, discuss and find how this border relates to our conception, our notion of urbanism, life, architecture. So everybody knows it's not a kind of new area. Border is with everybody. Border is part of life. And how and when border originates, everybody knows. It's not a new thing. History has all the answers. It's derived from ethnic conflict, religious conflicts that we see, resource imbalance, which creates the differences of economic transactions, political conflicts manifested in many kind of tools, which call it ethnic, religious, resource conflict. Power turns to rivalry. So I think there are many agents of creation of border. And the border, we can see from history, we can see now what is the difference between those border and now. The same character and the intention of human agony is connected to border. But we cannot unfold and we cannot change it. So border, it provokes conflict, mobility, displacement, war, negotiations, even not inter-regional, inter-city, inter-neighborhood. We see the border has many manifestations, many shapes. So what are the questions that emerged behind the initiative that we started in 2017? The aspects of personal excursion, which my personal excursion and interest came from my personal encounter with my son. And it's also the fascination of being slightly nomad, because we were kind of a nomad by default. Because if you look at the 3-4 generation back, they were all moving from one place to another. And this is a quite natural tendency for human being to explore. And that's the right human tendency. And we have to kind of agree that this is the natural tendency for everybody to move. The mobility is part of the life. So it started with the nomadic life, and also the search for valid research interest, that whether the border urbanism or border can be taken into urbanism and explore as a discourse analysis. So this is what the starting foundation of our thinking. When we say that I will show you, there are kind of a few kind of very key important people that kind of started with that initiation. The questions we asked among us, are borders the manufactured human conditions? Obviously, the answer would be yes. Are borders the social, political, geographical constructs? The answer maybe would be yes. Okay. Are borders default social order? It's a blurring answer, whether it's in social order or it can be taken to the social manifestation of order. So how could we explore the notion of border from architecture, urbanism, allied discipline? Because we have to admit that we are not a politician, we are not a social scientist. Partly we are social scientists because architecture, urbanism actually deals with society. But how we can actually put that into the context of architecture and urbanism. So this was the first leg of our journey. And we looked at the current one, which is the Brexit and its border. What is the change? Because this is the live experience that we are having everyday basis. Everyday life is changing. The cost and the supply chain is changing. So this is what interests us more. And we are continuously kind of monitoring the progress of individual kind of country, the mobility, the flow of money, the economy, and its effects on urbanism and architecture, which is about the building, the cost of living, many host of problem we can see. But the geographical border provokes movement always in the history. If you look at the difference between two geographical entity, and we find that, okay, there is an interest of moving from one place to another because of exploration. We were explorer thousands of years ago. So this is the tendency that movement happened. But also opposite way, we can see the tendency to go against border, because what provokes us to question whether we need border or not. It was funny, kind of 5 years ago, I was talking to one of the kind of my colleagues, say, can we do one experiment very secretly, tell every nation that, okay, stop surveillance along the border, but don't tell anybody. What do we do then? In a moment of time, like 24 hours, we will try to find out we are not moving. We are not crazy enough to cross the border, because it's a tendency that we know there's a danger, but we can relax it for 24 hours. But it's embedded in our mind, and this is the main thing. We move from one place to another because we have always been nomad, and we are going to be nomad in the future. So this is a tendency which has been compromised by the intensity of border. The border can be hard, the border can be complex, can be soft, depending on who you are. So, but the question is, where do we start from the border, the thinking of border? I mean, I searched a few kind of social science and medical science, and it says that, okay, the border and its kind of divisions and conflicts starts from the genetic code. Even it happens to animals, it happens to us. From the day one, we kind of create our kind of census and our friends, we find that there is a conflict always on goods, services, and we try to kind of always try to conquer and go to the top, always say, we want to conquer and we want to be advanced. Right? And if you look at this one, it's a very simple kind of assertion that the genes shape our sociological order. It is a kind of gene shapes our understanding of the border differences, religious extremism, the differences of ideology, even within kind of one family. The twin carries some individual characteristic which makes it different opinion. And then, so this is what about the neurological genetic, which is far from us to explore, because what we can actually relate to, that this is our human instinct to go for the differences. Even we've put fences, we try to pull curtain to create our own domain. And that is the thing. We are not questioning whether we need to remove that tendency, but we need to learn what it is doing to our life, to our urbanism, our construction, our thinking. So if we look at the line as a border, it contains a code. Sometimes it contains the religious code, sometimes it's race, resources, greed, conflict, war. The line is not a line, is not a physical entity. It has a meaning the meaning is given by the country who has created the border. So if you look at, I mean, the slides have got some of the books that I have read and I'm still flipping through. And you can see the Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography, which can actually tell you some of the geopolitical approach to border making. So the question is, okay, whether we can actually construct the border urbanism as a discourse, as a kind of learning into, and also we can actually explore more allied kind of understanding of, from the book we call The Production of Space by Henry Lefebvre. It's talked about the border issues are found as social political debates in postmodernism, cultural studies, and post-colonialism, ethnic studies. And we can actually base on those writing which can actually give us kind of foundation to the thinking of border. Two books that I recommend, that The Clash of Civilization by Huntington, which was banned in 1990s. It was not allowed to be published because of its controversial element of which we see now in the last 20 years happening. The religious conflict, the new approach to the civilization and the migration with the border is another book that can actually give us a sense of how the border and its definition is changing. Rethinking Border, Political Materialities of Border, Views Beyond the Border Country are some of the books can actually give us some knowledge and foundation to move forward and see, okay, here we go. We have some correlation from architecture, urbanism, and planning. So border discourse may have roots in social construction, intrinsic human races, coded genetically. We summarize that. And nothing we can do about it because it is a given by default. But can we do something? So we started discussing, like in the global platform with some of my colleagues, international colleagues, that, okay, let's think about it because it's nothing new. Can we look at it in a different way? Because I think many universities around the world are trying to kind of look at the issue of border and its relevance to politics, social geography, human geography, architecture. It's very new to kind of connect to this border issue. So some of the strands we put down in front of us and thinking, what can we do about it? Characteristic of social displacement. What are the displacement phenomena? What are the type of transient and temporal settlement at the borderland or out of the borderland? What are the typologies of form of settlement? What are the conflict and cultural hybridity which are connected? Cultural hybridity can be the product of conflict. The architecture of weak form or at borderland, regenerative architecture as a social cultural policy, a phenomenology of generic places, border invoked centers, and all those issues with social capital, the social justice, spatial justice in relation to the border and border making. So we first thought, okay, we should kickstart the first conference in 2018 in Aberdeen. And we found that it's a very, very interesting kind of response. And we had the keynote speaker from a number of our senior colleagues in the university, practitioner, people from all over the world came. And these are some of the snapshots of the topic, which are quite interesting from the geographical position. Came from Singapore, came from India, from South Africa, America, and we found that there's a fascinating stories to tell about the border and its influence on socio-cultural and political domain in those region. So, but again, I thought, okay, making it as a project in master's student. And I had elective and I put down this hypothetica, which is from the Walter Duranty's hypothetica, which shows multiple typology of border phenomena, access through soft, hard, external, internal, seasonal, all typology in one drawing, which doesn't exist, but it is a hypothetica which tells the range of border and its phenomena. And we looked at some of the globalization and the border making, because the globalization is anti-border. We try to kind of share across many, many things like goods and services, and even the music I hear can be heard by Bruno or César. So I think it's a global platform which doesn't have any boundary. And so we looked at those subject of even go down to micro level of social border, where the border is being created by the access to urban spaces, the spatial injustice by the pattern of urbanism, which stops people to move. And there's a kind of very kind of alarming kind of information of how this globalization is kind of reducing the local power. And then we looked at the Chinese city as its cultural border, the border typology, the social border, and the liminal border, which is about the digital world, which is against the border making. And fortunately, we found Spanish team who came here in Aberdeen, wanted to do the second in 2019 by Guido Simadomo from Malaga. And we were fortunate to kind of go there in beautiful Malaga. And the question was, what is the fragmentation, disposition, and connection of border? And we had number of like 60 papers from 30 plus countries, similar to Aberdeen. And then we were planning in 2020 to go to Sopron. If you know the Sopron, which sits in the west of Hungary, and it's next to Austria. So I think it's a very interesting place in the sense that it shares many historical transformation of mobility, inter-regional mobility, and it's still under question whether this is the door, the gateway to European migration. So Sopron was selected, but it didn't happen because of the COVID. And then we even didn't think of the online conference because we were not sure how we can actually do that. But finally, after the COVID, we slightly concurred, but not fully, but we are thinking of third border urbanism conference, which will question about the disentangling the border perception, because the global perception of border is different from different regions. And then we want to question that. And we want to kind of place this in the triangular discussion with Brazil by César and Bruno and the team, with my colleague from Ghana and London, not Scotland, but London, in a sense that, okay, I've got somebody from London in the London South Bank University, Igia Troiani. So I think we are in a kind of process of doing this as a parallel session, 3 different countries, 3 different time zone, and we are still working on it. But what it does from here is we are continuously looking for funding and the future research scope, and it's inter-regional kind of a cooperation. And then we are still kind of working on longer term vision of not the conference, even smaller kind of this kind of a talk and publication, research funding. It can happen because the book which is been out in August. I think the first conference is already in the publication, and then printing is happening in August. We will get the copy. It's a 600 pages of book. We try not to kind of deselect. We try to encourage everybody to be in the book, and we want to kind of see the different kind of opinion, and this is quite interesting in a sense that we encouraged everyone to put their thoughts from their own kind of geographical position. And then the three kind of statement came from three very high level researcher from Emily Tallon, who is the urbanism lab in University of Chicago. Unique nuanced insights from a diverse range of regions, and border is explored through the questions, the security, identity, and also the London South Bank, which is the venue of the third conference. And somebody from Texas, Austin, wrote about this book, and it will be available. So work is underway on the second book, which is coming from Spain, Malaga. And we have started designing webs so that we can actually put through different networking through this web. And you can actually look at it through Urbanism Border Global Research Group. So what I find fascinating, because we found that border issues is not only issue of political and social, it's an architectural issue as well. And looking at those, I find that interesting. The CBDX happened, I think, in June 21, International Design Idea Competition, Invisible Border, another initiative. So researchers, practitioners are always thinking about this, but we are not kind of analyzing those. I think I would be interested to analyze those, what is giving us through this design exercise. I met Todd Miller, who was talking in the TV, and I quickly used my mobile phone to capture that he is the guy. Okay, I should actually interact. Todd Miller wrote a number of books, and I communicated with him with this picture that, okay, I found your discussion fascinating, and I want to read more. And I think hopefully we'll have interaction soon, but I think that Todd Miller has the Border Chronicle, kind of continuously updating information of US-Mexico border. And he wrote many kind of blogs on the new border, new conflicts, Syrian border. Hopefully he will probably put some thoughts on the Ukraine and the Russian. The Brexit, which is very relevant, and I'm sure you will probably think about what is happening in here, because this is what we are witnessing coming from that EU and then try to kind of exit. So we found that gradually it's happening. The resource allocation is affected, supply chain of labor and material is affected, high cost of mobility. Design and construction is the ripple effect of all those. And the construction may go high, the inflation and the aftermath of the conflict in Ukraine is we are paying high price for the fuel and other traveling. And then it will happen more and more, because this is the tendency which history showed us, and it will happen again and again. Emerging wars, which is the controlled all delete architecture and life, because we need to think about what it does to the architecture, habitat, and the social life. And these are the books which are coming at the back of those war, global governance and the new wars, new and old war. Mary Kaldor is talking about the scar, the emptiness that the war is kind of giving to the society. And we not only the architecture, also the life quality is going down day by day. And there is a hole in every life, every family. But I think what we want to kind of take from there, that how social reconstruction as a part of architecture and urbanism can be reinstated. So we have seen the war in the global control V. Control V is the repetition of war, and also it's happening, borderland, displacement, expulsion. But our focus, which is very much to do with the spatial quality, life quality, the fragility, the structure, the mobility. And I think I put down in the LinkedIn that my hypothesis is if that can be workable from New York to London, I think what we as a humanity will gain, I think it is a question, is a hypothesis that what do we gain from there? Is it another conflict or advantage of the global economy, trade, and prosperity? So, but this is about us to think. But the last slide, which I would conclude by putting this John Lennon's lyrics, imagine there is no countries. It isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. But I think this is kind of a hypothesis, and hypothesis is the hope that can actually bring us closer, but it cannot be totally replicated what John Lennon has stated. So I think the division has other positive aspect. Division creates competition, division creates the difference of opinion and multiple culture. And within that, the question is how to harmonize those differences. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Quazi.
Welcome. I think the floor is I think César and the rest of the participants. I very much thank you for keeping your patience and listening to me. You will find that you know already all these things, and you don't find something very kind of out of blue that this is just a collection of thoughts, but you might kind of find some time to kind of think about how we can actually put that border issue in the context that you're doing, in either designing or research or teaching. But I leave this platform to Cesar to kind of carry on discussion. If any questions, I will be happy to ask, answer.
Thank you very much, Quazi. I think you can stop sharing the screen.
I will.
And we can see you. Okay. I can see everyone as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
So if you wish to make any questions, you can use the reactions button here and raise the hand, or like this. Or you can also raise your hand in the video because I'm seeing you all. Thank you very much, Quazi, for your presentation and for bringing up border urbanism. I don't know where Quazi went now. Is he here? I think he went away. You may all also write in the chat, and we'll read your questions, no problem. I'll wait for Quazi to come back.
I have raised my hand, César.
Okay, I thought you were applauding, but okay, you're the first one to ask then. Thank you, Frederico. You sent a link here in the chat. Unbuilding walls of the German pavilion at the Venice Biennale. Thank you. You cannot check that. I'm just waiting for Quazi to come back.
Hi, César, Bruno, everybody. Just explain the two links because I think that's totally correlated to the topic of the presentation today. It was like the two last biennales. One is the German pavilion. The name of the pavilion was On Building Walls, talking about the walls that we have separate the countries. And the other one was the Swiss pavilion. That was also talking about the situation of the borders here in Switzerland. So just maybe it's worth sharing.
Maybe we could have people identifying themselves, like Federico from Switzerland, Brazilian who lives there and works there, has his office, and we're all looking forward to working for him. Thank you so much for your presence, Federico, and your suggestions. Alfredo, I think, wishes to make a statement, but I'm worried about Quazi. I think he went out to lunch, you know, because to make a presentation takes a lot of energy. So he might be looking for carbohydrates to fill up his tank. Would you like to get it rolling, Alfredo? Then Quazi will come in.
I would wait, Quazi. I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, I've sent him a message.
I have you got it, César?
I've sent him a message, but he didn't reply yet. Let's see if he comes back.
Well, that's being recorded, so in any event, he could recall or see the nature of the comments I want to express. Welcome you all. Certainly, this theme, the way of looking at this problem, as Quazi has really affects us. Hello, Quazi.
Hi, Walfredo. Sorry, I mean, that's my problem because I didn't switch on my computer power and then it drained.
Certainly, the extent and the context in which you are looking at right now is somehow very, very interesting. Just when you began to talk, I was, it came to my mind, for example, Jerusalem, which has a urban border that causes many problems between Palestinians and Jews, and they've been trying to establish periods of occupation or zones to that race or the other race. Certainly, it's a problem that affects urbanism and architecture in many ways. Here in Brazil, I guess that many of you have been seeing in the last days some problem here of the killing of two people, an English journalist, Don Phillips, and a Brazilian employee of FUNAI, which is the organization that takes care of Indian indigenous settlements. They've been navigating, they were visiting a kind of border that we have here, which is very complicated. It's the border between Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. In its Amazon region, a vast territory in which we have only one town, which is called Tabatinga. They have a military group settled, based there, with less than 100 men to take care of the security, the actions, and all the things in a border that is very complicated. They extract, irregularly extract goods, and they commerciate woods between two countries, and cocaine and everything. And Brazil, so to speak, have not taken, it's not taken care of, even have not the knowledge of this vast region with some problems that culminate with the killing of two people that were there. here we have up in the north, between the state of Amapá, the state of Rondônia, borders with Guyana. I've been to Rio Branco some years ago, and we have people coming from Guyana by planes, flying from Guyana to Rio Branco to buy groceries and be back to Guyana. It's something that I had never seen. And here in the south, we have some situation that may be known by you, which is what the world call the triple frontier between Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil, which harbor even terrorists from Arab terrorists, and move in that place. There are movement of money and weapons and all the things in a triple frontier that no one of the countries can really control or share some control. We even have cities here in Brazil, Pedro Juan Caballero, so they are divided by borders. You are in one street, one side is Brazil, the other side is Paraguay. So I think I'm guessing that this would be a very, very interesting field of research, and to launch our views and our interests in those situations that we already have here. And this would certainly be helped by the experience and the knowledge that you and other colleagues already have. We could certainly make points in some cases here that are in that direction of worrying and preoccupation with what happened in borders, what movements, people, money, economic issues, or social issues. We have some examples here in Brazil with defined borders, and in situations that the borders could be defined. For example, in Amazonia now, no one knows even where the border is and who takes care of it, which leads to some tragedy as we had in the last few days. Concluding, it's a very interesting field of study that you are sort of launching or calling attention of all of us to prepare something and to have some research in this sense to change impressions and views internationally as we are doing now. Thank you very much, Quazi, to bringing up this subject in very, very clear form. And we hope this would lead to other discussions where we could maybe bring some cases of study and bring some reflections on it to share our views with people as those ones here that are interested in this. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Walfredo. I think somebody wants to talk. César, if you can manage those.
Sure. We have a message from Claudia. Claudia's going to have to disconnect, but she's saying thank you, Quazi. Oh, you wish to speak something?
Yes.
Okay.
No, just thanks. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It was an amazing talk, and it would be great to listen to it again. So I'm sure you share the link of the recording with us, and yeah, I'd love to listen to it again. And looking forward to other meetings with everyone, and yeah, to working together. Thank you for everything, César. Thank you for the whole team.
Thank you, Claudia.
Amazing talk.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you,
Quazi,
Claudia.
if you wish to comment on something that Walfredo said, we can.
Yes, I think the perception of border is changing. It has changed many times through the whole civilization. If you look at the movement and the right to move and right to kind of go to some or kind of transgressing the border was because it was not a question about the enmity or just the tendency of kind of opposing the idea of movement, but the border rests on, it's like a siphonic, if you know the science of kind of, if some resources are very, very rich on one side of the border and compared to other side, the tendency will be always there to kind of move to that higher resource country. And that is the fact which we see different European kind of movement, African, Asian movement. We cannot say that we will be neutralizing all the resources across the whole world so that we can stop the movement. So buying from kind of by plane to something, it's happening everywhere. For example, that depending on what do you buy, because some of the shopping happens elsewhere. And it is the tendency of kind of exploring because it is attached to the potentiality of those countries to kind of look at the globalization and the production kind of a pattern. It is about we are not moving, but the goods are moving to us. So I think this is the mobility of goods, which we can find something which we haven't actually gone to the place, but we are actually using that. The internet is kind of neutralizing all the movement because we can actually be anywhere in any part. But I think, well, if I can kind of follow what Wilfred was saying, that the fragmentation is inevitable because if you think about the comparison, the one city is resourceful and then it draws people from other cities, even within a country, is the fundamental to megacity formation, because the megacity, which I'm going to present a paper on the 16th in Bangladesh. So what I've argued that the tendency of agglomeration is based on the resource allocation. So the resource allocation is the fundamental thing of mobility. And if we neutralize that, we need to think about how resources can be shared but it doesn't happen because the economics, you need to think about the economics behind all the resource allocation. Some country gains, some country loses, and that's how the machine works. So I don't know whether I put down that kind of a thoughts, which I think.
Quazi, sorry. We have here in Brazil a classical situation where people from Brazil, from the states of Paraguay, people travel to the border of Paraguay to buy things in Paraguay because taxes are low. In the people that lives in the border, they go there to fill the tank of their car, or to buy tires, or to buy some goods that have lower taxation in Paraguay and bring that to Brazil. This is a movement that is classical. It's very well known here. Yeah. And this in terms of research, it goes to the questions that we are talking about right now. And the mobility of people in relation to goods or service, or service in relation to people. This is a border question that we have here very clearly. Very, very, very clearly. Okay?
No, I think if you look at...
I was thinking some years ago, I was vice president of World Organization of New Towns, and we decided to have a meeting in Ireland. But even for political reasons, this meeting had to be to occur in Northern Ireland at the beginning, and then we had to come down to Dublin in Southern Ireland. You do not imagine, or do not know what at that time, what kind of travel we had to do in a bus, being stopped at each 100 kilometers for search of people, in search of the vehicle, search of the bus. We take some 5 hours to go to Belfast to Dublin. This problem occurs in some ways that affect the life of people, or change the vision of people, or establish some problem that must be subject to research. It's all I'm saying.
Oh, I thank Wilfredo and thank Quazi for the response. Following the try to be a diverse discussion, I've seen that Joaquin asked to have a word, and BT's Maria Beatriz is also with the hand raised. But I would ask Farming to speak first, just so we can focus a little bit on other countries as well. And then we have Joaquin, and then we have BTs, okay? So please, Farming.
Hello, everyone. Although I raised my hand, it's not really about Bangladesh I want to talk about, but I was living in Sweden for 4 years, and I was studying in Lund, and then living for 3 years in Malmo. So that was in the border, like in the border of Copenhagen. And so I wanted to talk about the Øresund region. If you're aware of that the Øresund region, it's like there is Helsingborg on Denmark, and then there's Helsingborg on the Sweden side. So they have this Øresund region, which is like the two places are connected by ferry for 5 kilometers, and then by road it's 165 kilometers. But as a whole region, they were working on development, and it's like the development was actually mainly because, like they were trying to work together for universities and business purposes. And there were a lot of people who were actually, I think the pay scale was better in Copenhagen or Denmark. So a lot of people were living in working in Denmark, and then they were living in Malmo, which was the first city from, if you come from Denmark to Sweden. So I used to think like, if you talk about border urbanism, this was a very good example, because I was actually living there and experiencing it. Like, there were so many places and universities and hospitals and clinics that were being developed. And then you could just take, from Malmo, it's just a 20-minute train ride through the Sound Bridge to Copenhagen or somewhere in Denmark. So if you want to buy something, just as President Wilfredo was saying, you can just take the train, just go there. And I think in that way, like a lot of times the business and the, like when they were doing developments and funding for the developments, they were all, like doing it together like a region. So maybe, like connecting trains and all those things, like work together like a region. And I think if this sort of thought could be, implemented in other places, a lot of problems could be solved. Maybe not the whole country, but the cities which are connected by border. Because although due to the like the Schengen visa, you can actually travel throughout Europe, I think maybe to 22 countries, but like the access is not always so easy. Because I remember traveling from Malmo to Berlin via the bus and the ferry, but like the checkposts were always there. But traveling from Malmo to Copenhagen, it wasn't really anything. Maybe sometimes somebody would check, it's just ID. But the transport was very easy, and as far as, and work and connection, all these things were much easier. So for me, living in Bangladesh, I would say that now we have the trains that lead, because we share borders with India on 3 sides. So the trains have started. So, like actually on the, it's on the west. So there are so many cities that are sharing the border with Bangladesh, and but like there are checkpoints where you can take the train. But I wish the transit was much easier, when you go, but sometimes the visa processing is much difficult if you want to take a visa to India. But I think over the years, if this becomes easier, like business-wise, I think their tourism sector is increasing, and if we do work on our part also, and people can come easily to Bangladesh, in the same way, our tourism sector can also be, like helped, and border urbanism, if on those, in just at least for starters, in cities which are connected with a border, if things get better on those bases, I think it actually helps on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Farmin. I will also point out that Giovanna Astolfo has sent a link which talks a little bit about refugees and camps on borders. So you can all check it out.
Yes, the situation of Ukraine nowadays that is giving problems to every neighboring country, with a bunch of people going there, escaping from the war, is another problem that we can be looking at.
I'm addressing you all by the first name. It's not a matter of disrespect. It's just because we are used to doing this in e-DAU. So I've said Farmin, I've said Valfredo, and I hope you all understand that this is to maintain a friendly conversation, not any sign of disrespect. Quazi, I'll ask you to wait a little bit so that we also have the input of Denise and Stephen from Cape Town, okay? And then you can comment on it. Please, Stephen and Denise. I'll press a button here and maybe something will pop on your screen. Let's see if it pops there. There you go. Okay, you are unmuted. You can say something. Let's see if we hear you. Yeah, we can't hear you. So there's the problem there with the connection of your microphone. Let's see. Oh, it's a shame. Because I can see you can hear us, but there's something with the microphone. Zoom can be a little bit like that sometimes. Okay. If you were using the computer, there's a small arrow next to the microphone with where you can also access audio settings, and then you can try to connect the microphone or something like that. Nevertheless, I think I'll move along and then we'll come back to you if there's no problem. And then we'll go to Joaquin, which is the next in line.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I just would like to release some thoughts. Also, I apologize to having arrived late here. So I don't know if possibly Zaman has already taken some similar thoughts as the ones I feel like I should expose here. And it can be, I can use a metaphor of the water glass, no? Half full water glass. You can see the empty part or can see the part which is full of water. And now in the position of the designer, I think I have not only the tendency, but also the pleasure and also the obligation or the responsibility to see the part, the half full part, since we do the objects to be used, no, the an empty glass is useless. So for the designer, doesn't make much sense. It does make sense if you see the half which is full. And so I can see the border is like this, no? A border, it's a line. A line can separate, but a line can also join. Depends on the way you see a line. And I prefer to see the line joining than separating two entities, whatever they may be, geographical or not geographical. I remember there's a very funny comedian, Jô Soares, Brazilian comedian in TV. And he had a sketch which was imagining he lived in a house in the border of, for instance, Paraguay and Brazil. So his house was exactly in the border, and the line of the border crosses in the middle of his house, his room, his living room. There's a line in his living room separating the Paraguayan territory from the Brazilian territory. So when he's on one side, he speaks Portuguese. When he crosses this line, the other side goes to the kitchen, then starts speaking Spanish. No? And it's all the different behaviors, no, and culture and material culture and whatever, and then even the language, no, that we have this strange situation here in South America, which half of South America speaks Spanish and the other half speaks Portuguese. And the half of which speaks Spanish are many countries, are different countries, no? And the part of Portuguese is only one. So I see all of the brothers I don't think that globalization is a phenomenon which will lead us to erasing borders. I don't think the globalization erases borders. I think it outlines borders, it enhances borders, it celebrates borders, no, the joining of two cultures. I don't think ever borders will disappear, ever. If I think where my neighborhood, no, I live next to, I live in Rio, next to Leblon, and next to Leblon there is Ipanema, and next to Ipanema there is Copacabana, and next to Copacabana there is Botafogo, and next to Botafogo there is Flamengo, and each part of this are different. You see, you feel the difference when you move from Leblon to Ipanema to Copacabana. It's different worlds, different people, different behaviors, different. So if it's so different in a small limit like this, it will never be different in a worldwide. I think on the contrary, I think the globalization is a process of exchanging and not for making everything equal or similar. No, I prefer to see in this point of view, and I don't think this is what prevails. No, I think cada vez mais, how do you translate cada vez mais? I think the world is more interested, maybe more interested in separating or in joining or making just one world for internet, for example. No, it will be ideal that everyone speaks English. No, it will be perfect for the internet world that everyone speaks English. But I don't think the internet is necessarily taking us to everyone to speak English. I prefer to see that I will learn how to translate terms like salvar. Save in English is to keep. And we translate here, save to save a work, a job that you did, you have to save. You have to save. In Portuguese, say salvar. Salvar is not keep. Salvar is saving the world, saving. It's a religion's thought. No, in Spanish, for example, they don't translate save to salvar. They translate save to guardar, which is the right word. Save is guardar. in English to keep, not only to save your life, for instance. No? So I prefer to see these exchanging all this error, this problems of translating the international languages, than to be afraid that we will always, in a short time, will be all of us speaking English.
Thank you, Joaquim. I believe the e-DAU has this purpose as well, that we're not surpassing the individualities to become one voice, but we are a group with many voices. And I think we are on the same line here. And Quazi, if you wish to comment, I've seen that Stephen and Denise are back, and you can comment on this previous responses.
I think I'll be very, very brief, because I agree with you, Jacob. Because I think the question is not about humanizing harmony, but the difference. Border makes us be different. You know, we are different because of the border. Even as a personality, we are different because we have the entity, our own character, and we respect that. Different culture needs to be respected. The border does that. But I think what we are trying to see, that the border is a question, is an element to study all the differences, study what it does to the human being, study how the line actually has created the difference of opinion, difference of social and economic kind of conflict. But I think it's not to say that, okay, we are advocating that neutralize all the border, but I think more just to get the knowledge on how border can actually teach us. And that is what probably the best answer, that border needs to be taught from any discipline. That even I could say that health and well-being, displacement can actually, climate change can be, all discipline can actually share the issue of border. If you look at the climate change, the displacement is related to climate change, and then we see that the life quality changes because of climate change. So border can be very generic kind of line which can be taken to various disciplines to understand how that can actually teach us. We want to explore, and this is the best platform to explore different opinion on the border, the existence of border, and how we confront the border as a issue.
Thank you, Quazi. I had a question as well related to these talks, but I'll save mine for later. Stephen and Denise, let's see if we can hear you now.
Can you hear us now?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yay, that's fantastic. So first of all, thank you for a fascinating talk and an excellent presentation. And thank you, Bruno, where is he now? There he is, for introducing us to this. So just for you to know, when we started studying, Bruno and Denise and I started the same year. And then he vanished shortly afterwards and went to Brazil. And we hadn't heard from each other for about 40 years. And then he contacted us. So that's marvelous. Okay. So South Africa we're from Cape Town, and that's South Africa. And this talk has made me think that South Africa is really a country of borders. Because, you know, historically, you all know about apartheid, when there was a strict separation between, it so happened to simplify it, between black and white. And the white was the one who was in advantage, made it an advantage for himself to occupy those areas which were economically advantageous, and the blacks were pushed more or less aside. And now for the last 25 years, that's all changed. And now there's an equal amount of talk about borders and how to break them down. But because of the long term, and it wasn't only the apartheid era, but also the colonial era before that, the long term influence of separation, it is incredibly difficult to now try and merge the different cultural groups and social groups in South Africa. And it's just isn't happening. So from an economic point of view, there's still, and as an example, the black areas, the black residential areas are far away from the town centre or from the industrial areas. They need to travel long distances. It costs them a lot of money. The travel conditions are rather poor, and so we're battling with this urban separation or borders, and not only at urban level. We also have a huge problem with within Africa. Because when South Africa 25 years ago became democratic and opened up, we had so many people coming from all over Africa, and they were really economic migrants and looking for a better life. And not that they always found it over here, but slowly but surely the local population has felt a bit compromised, and they say, no, we don't want all these people from all over, from Mozambique, Angola, Congo, Ghana,
Kenya.
Nigeria, wherever, all over the show. And so there's now strife. There is political response to that. And I just thought this is very much a topical issue in terms of what we've heard from you and from the various commentaries. That's my contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Denise. Quazi.
No, I think it's kind of reminding me of Johannesburg. I visited there in 2006, and the bus which took us, there were 10 different nationalities in the bus, and we were using the camera to kind of capture. And when we entered one area, our coordinator says, okay, hide the camera. We'll tell you when to bring the camera out, because you are entering a zone which is highly regarded as vulnerable. So I think within even Johannesburg, we saw the difference. The border has been created by the economy, the employment, the transient people who came actually settled there and didn't get enough recognition from the government, although they contribute economically to the country by kind of a labor, transportation. But I think the problem is the perception, which is, but I told the coordinator that, can I walk? I said, no, you cannot walk. Okay. So that the problem of some zone which has been created by its perception, but they are not dangerous. Okay, because if we do something dangerous, maybe you end up in problem anywhere in the world. But I think they are lovely people. I think that what we have witnessed, that it has been created, we call it manufactured, by the way the economy worked there, the mining but I think I know a little bit about the place because I heard from Stephen, but I think it was a week-long kind of a study trip. But I think what I understood had a pocket of demarcation even within the city of Johannesburg, in the central Johannesburg. Even that can be seen by the transportation system, because the bus are different in category. The bus are for the different kind of sector of the society. So I think it's all in all, it kind of gives and the manifestation of differences are there through social space, transportation, through quality of life, the house type typology, because those community who are trying to kind of safeguard. They have a high kind of a barbed wire with the CCTV. You can actually find that. Why? Because here we don't try to put them, we try to kind of share the wall. So I think it depends on the context, but the context has been manufactured. So I want to kind of respond to Stephen.
Thank you, Quazi. And maybe we have several borders within the cities as well. And maybe the case is not to erase borders, but to superpose them. And because if we trace, for example, houses, we can make a border around houses, but it can also be a neighborhood which is mixed. So we could also trace a border from, I don't know, social, economic aspects or income or something like that. So maybe we have superposition. And I only make this commentary, Quazi, because I'm going to pass along to Maria Beatriz, which we call BTs. You have managed to research Foucault, and you have managed to research Henri Lefebvre, and BTs has researched Edgar Morin, which deals with complexity. I don't know if she's going to say something about that, but I'll bring her along, please. Yeah, we can hear you very low, but we can hear you.
I'm going to change.
Let's see if you can raise the microphone there.
Now it's better.
It's a little bit better. Yes, I can hear you. I don't know if everyone can hear you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Quazi, for your excellent speech. And I think I've learned a lot. And what I want to say is about complexity, because I've studied in my PhD urbanism and complexity. And I studied at that point there, I studied very hard. I understood it, but I don't know how to deal with complexity in urbanism. And now I'm beginning to think we could reach to a point that we could have some light at the end of the tunnel. Because the questions, you put some questions in your speech that I think it's very important. The question we put to think about the matter. And as I studied complexity, some friends sent me some articles, and I received last week, 2 weeks ago, I think, a very good article from an architect called Kinsey Climes, and he published in internet in a site called Rhizome R&D. And the beginning is about architectural, the link between Christopher Alexander and complexity. And at the end of the article, he was asking why architects are not linked to complexity, because he didn't find in the world people using this. And he pointed out a very good question. If cities are complex, if countries are complex, if people are complex, don't you use the complex study of complex systems to solve it? And I think this is a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to I could have other things to do, but my goal is to talk to him about my study, because it's in Portuguese and he doesn't find it. And and I'm going to talk with him because I think he has a very good way to study these complex matters we deal now with the transformation of the world. And that's why I'm talking. I just want to, you have said many things I have to think about. And I'm going to, as Claudia, who left us, I have to see it again to learn it more. But I would like to suggest you to go after Quazi Climbs and this article, because I think for us, that is the urbanism, it's a very good, I'm going to write it down if you want. I'm going to write down here and put, maybe I can put a link on the.
Yeah. No, thank you.
And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I mean, thank you very much, Maria. I mean, that would be great if I can know the article, but still, I mean, I'm not different to the people actually I see in front of me, because I'm still learning. I'm still at the stage we call primary stage, but every time I read it, I get excited about how distant we kept border issues from architecture and urbanism. We will probably bring it to the discourse. You mentioned about Christopher Alexander, the pattern language. And I try to teach every year, but some of my maybe friends from elsewhere, they said, we banned Christopher Alexander. We terminated the book Oregon Experiment, the timeless way of thinking, all we abandoned. Then my question is, why you abandoned? Because it's a rich way to think about the connected society. If you use the methodology of interlaced, city is not a tree. So interlace can be taken into different morphological study, and you can find that how medieval and organic city are interlinked. It's not about the complex, well, the complexity is there, but I believe the complexity can create dynamic city. The less complex is more linear, and it is the modernism that bring that linearity, because the modernism has changed that complexity into more simple and direct, but it is also linked to the long journey to work and separation of the complexity. And we try to kind of put all the land uses as the garden city, and Ebenezer Howard came and put all the kind of a different topological. But I think the complexity, we need to learn a lot, because complexity has the answer of vitality, the social connectivity, the daily, everyday life in the complexity. And complexity can be learned through this border as well, because we are in the complexity, but we are also confronting border, different border, because the crossing the road is a border, because that's the life, a question about life, death. The crossing certain land use is a border. So border exists everywhere. I tried to sit down with some kind of shelving to border myself from my office mate. It's a tendency. We cannot deny that the tendency exists, and it will exist, because genetically we have that separation. But how to look at the bright side of this complexity? The complexity has all the answers of how people naturally interact, and how those complexity give the everyday life, the quality of life. If we break that one, that's the danger. Thanks.
Thank you, Quazi. I would also suggest that we expand our research as the research coordinator in e-DAU currently, we would expand our research to urban topology, probably, so that we can talk about relations instead of only morphological aspects. Maybe topology could bring us new connections, since you've also stated that we give the meaning to the borders, something like that. We give meaning to borders. Borders are there and we give meaning, so maybe we need to tend to attend relations. Bruno, could you be the third to speak now? I've seen your hand for a while now, but Joy has said she would be happy to talk, and Vicky has a
Vicky, Christy,
raised hand as
yeah.
well. Okay.
Yeah,
So
we'll want to hear from each of you. So we won't be stopping. Thank you.
Thank you. So Joy, please, if you wish to say something.
Hey there, it's lovely to meet you all, and it's been really interesting listening to the different sort of takes on border issues. My experience of borders is somewhat different. Being in Scotland, our border is with England, which is a very open border, so Brexit itself brought some issues. However, back in around, I think the first time I really thought about border issues was back in 2016, when I was doing some green gym den building with school children, and we were researching different examples of dens. And we came across the little blue house at the Calais jungle, which a refugee called Alpha Diane developed. I think that's still going, I'm not sure. And in the Calais jungle, I'm sure you're all aware of the border issues there and the levels of displacement, where many people are they lose their identity. Whatever they do, wherever they go, they're criminalized. So being a migrant or a refugee or being displaced, and we're talking about relations, urban topology, so researching a level of displacement that criminalizes survival might be quite an interesting take on what e-DAU is trying to do. And I was thinking, you know, Quazi and I are looking at digital formats and digital methods of engagement, and my research is primarily based on placemaking and urbanism, so looking at our urban health and how we connect with communities. But it might be worth mapping some sort of digital system of survival, especially in relation to climate change. For we're all having to adapt, and we have a huge number of displaced people, even students. In Robert Gordon's itself, the biggest intake of students comes from Nigeria, and these are all really sort of clever, hardworking people, but there's still issues around climate and adapting to the different climate. We have the lights on high, the heating on high, and our carbon footprint isn't great. So it's kind of like even addressing the practical issues. So I think we've got two levels. We've got like a digital system of survival, and we also have a practical system of survival. And I think how we map that might be like in regard to individual relationships and working with policymakers might be quite interesting. So that's my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on the matter. And Quazi, I think I'll pass along to Vicky, and then you comment on both. Okay? Okay. Please, Vicky.
Hi everyone. No, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's been really insightful. I am from Aberdeen, Scotland, and it's always been the case that we have issues with more deprived areas, and neighbours a little bit more wealthy. I think it's always been a learnt behaviour that oh, you don't go to Torre because, you know, they're of the crime and gangs and you know, different issues. And I think although there's maybe not a clear border between Cove and Torre, there is a border mentally, that there's a disconnection between those areas, between those villages. And I think trying to connect these two areas by changing perceptions, because obviously it's been learned over the years. So maybe to change thoughts and behaviours of those, to connect an invisible border would be good to see. So looking at more of a smaller area of issues, rather than a larger issue, border issue is also quite a good idea, I believe.
Thank you very much. Please, Quazi.
Yeah, no, I think Joy and Vicky, I know them very well, but I think that the comment that was made, I think is very, I mean, it's a scope for further investigation, because we are currently investigating 2 neighborhoods with Joy, Satan, and it's a deprived area. We call it SIMD, Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. But I think we create that opportunity by saying that, okay, hey, that is a border community, but we don't see the border. There is no Great Wall, but it's a perception that Vicky said, is a perception that we build on certain community, because the perception is equated by number of factors: crime, income, the quality of living. So these are the quality that we actually, or attribute we put in our assessment to find a place for living. If we go to live somewhere, we ask like, how's the neighborhood? And we try to assign certain attribute to say, okay, this is not my choice because there are higher crime. And it's a kind of a labeling of attribute of a city, and that gives the property price higher and lower. The land is same. The land is kind of within the 5 kilometer. There are maybe 3-4 zones of differential property price, but the land is same. The space are same. The quality of maybe building, the size of the building are same, but the perception brings all the labeling that, okay, this is not a preferred place because it is not safe, and that kills the property price, and that kills the perception of whether you should go and hang around there or not.
Thank you, Quazi. I'm very fond of semiotics, so every time you say perception, I will say, okay, let's do it, let's research it. Bruno, please, you can speak now, please, and then Christy will follow you.
Well, I almost would say ladies first, but I'm here really craving to say something about this meeting. Well, first of all, I would like to also congratulate our dear friend Zaman, Quazi, who I'm meeting now finally after many years. I would say something like 30 years or so. And he's sort of brought back the enthusiasm of our international conference on megacities, which we held in Asia with Hong Kong, Tongji University from China, Waseda University from Japan, And the schools of Sao Paulo, we were at the time invited to address this issue from the viewpoint of the University of Sao Paulo, but I opened it up to all the other schools, and we sent 10 proposals to make megacities like Sao Paulo better places to live in. And also, I would like to register, of course, my colleagues here in Brazil, whose presence is amazing, and they are family to me, even if I haven't met them personally, like César and Betis, others I have had this incredible pleasure to meet, and we will meet in the future, surely, personally, and hug each other like we like to do here, and kiss more or less 3 or 4 times. So what I wanted to say is that I'm very, very happy, very, very proud to see this e-DAU logo join up with other logos of people that are in fact working or fighting borders, in the sense that when Quazi was talking, I was thinking of John Lennon, and that's, being a bit of a musician, it seemed to me a wonderful way to end the lecture, and he did it. We didn't make any arrangement for this. And I think you could see John Lennon's view as utopic and far-fetched and impossible. But in fact, which is part of his thing as well, sort of work on that, the difficulties, of bringing people together. But I think the message there is very clear. I mean, it is possible. Of course it's possible. But we must somehow shift, in a way that we look at things. I don't receive, for example, daily newspapers anymore, because daily newspapers sell because of the bad news and not the good news. I mean, you have to really look into the newspaper to find the good news at the end of the newspaper normally, or in a cultural section or whatever. And the rest is terrible. It's just bloody and awful and fearful. And I think that the word that must be remembered, and I didn't hear it, is fear. Fear is probably what separates us, what segregates us. We are fearful in our fight for survival, because we see others not as our allies, not as our friends, not as the people with whom we will do great things, but we see them as a hindrance, as a problem. They may take away our jobs. They may, bring violence onto us and to our kin. So it's very troublesome, this thing of fear. And as architects and urbanists, I remember Osvaldo Bratsky, who's a big friend of Alfredo. I'm sure of that. Although he was from another generation of Brazilian architects and urbanists, early modernists. And he always said that architecture was such a privilege, because whereas, doctors and lawyers and other professions dealt with problems, really difficult problems to solve, we were mostly, having a good time with people who wanted to invest in houses and hotels and office buildings. I mean, it was just such a positive profession, and I think that is the way to go. I think that we must, at the same time, as Quazi has done, mostly showing the limitations, the actual limitations of and falsehood of barriers. We must invest very much on the positive possibilities that neighbors present to us. Neighbors with whom we often are separated by just a single wall. And if we add up all the walls in the world, we will come up with billions. But it's also true that we have billions of links, of connections. And when we talk about borders, we must look at that part. I think I fully agree with Joachim in his vision of the half glass. We have to look at the water. We have to look at the water because we are in a blue planet and water is more or less everywhere. It also feeds all the ecosystems of the world. So, and they don't take borders into consideration. So we must work on those systems, environmental systems, which link up everybody and work on that and find ideas and share those ideas and fight fear. We must fight fear. We must eliminate fear. And we must, contrary to this, invest in confidence, in the will to join, to share, to be together. And that's what we're doing here in the network. And all these comments that have come through today are very much in that line of thinking. I think Walfredo's suggestions for research in Brazil are wonderful. I also was very touched by the fact that we met again, Stephen and Denise. Oddly, we did it on WhatsApp, but suddenly we are now together. I think we even saw each other with Denise, but these were my classmates 53 years ago at Wits University in Johannesburg. And we shared a full year, a first year of architecture. And then, yes, I did vanish, but I didn't. You know, it's like that. You think you vanish, but you don't. And here we are leaving a message for humanity. There was a joke, I think, by Quazi earlier today, when he said, oh, the NASA, I told the NASA that we would be online and they could share this with everybody else. And I really fell into that. I thought it was a great idea, but I'm not sure it was reality. It was probably just, you know, a way of getting people interested to come in. And so what I think we as architects, urban designers, planners, designers, graphic designers must do is to show the ways with which we can build bridges. And I just wanted to remember when I was younger, I once had a psychologist come into the office, and I just created a little earlier than that, an institute, which is has survived in spite of many fears, all the way to 2022, 30 years. And shortly after that, the psychologist came and I talked to him and I told him about e-DAU, which is sort of e-DAU, an idea, e-DAU, whatever. And he listened to me and he said, Bruno, people in the world can be classified into two groups. And I said, what? Well, just two? Yeah, two groups. Those who build bridges and those who destroy bridges. And you're a builder of bridges. It's inside of you. You will always do this because you're a man of the world. You've come from Italy, you lived in South Africa, you came to Brazil, you studied in the United States, and you traveled broadly even to Asia. Not Australia, unfortunately, I'm dying to go there. But I was in China, for example, and that was an amazing experience. So the world is ours. John Lennon is right. It's not a dream. You just have to imagine it. And once we imagine it, it's possible. The impossible is possible. So I would like to share this idea. We must approach this issue from both sides. The side of the people who destroy bridges, like Russia has just done, at the same time that Russia has built a beautiful bridge to China, together with the Chinese. So, and they have incredible records of building bridges because they have incredible accidents in their geography. And such a huge country, you know, I mean, in worldly terms. So let's invest on that side. And I think it is a suggestion, look at complexity, face complexity, design complexity, introduce complexity to everything that we do, and remove from ourselves fear. Fear of showing the world who we are, how we think. Fear of being silly. Fear of, having an unsuccessful situation facing us. We must not have fear. And we must fight fear everywhere so that people will start seeing that fear does not exist. It is just an innate feeling of survival that now depends on all of us. It does not depend on each of us. So God bless to all. I'm very, very proud and happy to be with people like Kirsty, Joy, and all the others who are here and have come in and went out. And Hironanjo. I want to end with Hironanjo because Hironanjo is like, Nanjo is an interesting name because Anjo in Portuguese is angel, and he's an angel. He's an angel that protects us from Japan. He loves Brazil. He's known as the Brazilian Nanjo. There's another Nanjo, but he's the Brazilian Nanjo. And he lived and worked in Brazil. His children were born in Brazil, and Miho is just the most amazing wife that you can have. And I'm so happy to see him here. And I'm sure that in the next meetings, we will have some very interesting participation from everyone here on different issues. And we will be fighting fear and winning at the end. God bless.
Thank you very much, Bruno. We're used to having 2-hour-long sessions because we like to hear everyone, and Bruno usually has messages like this, but this one was special, I can guarantee you. Thank you, Bruno, for all that you shared, including these connections that you share with us. And I believe Denise has written here that John Lennon built bridges with music, and we need to do it with our abilities to plan and design. And maybe imagination is truly that, to turn it into images. And maybe this is what we need to do as well. And Joy has also written that it's been a pleasure connecting, and she looks forward to further opportunities to connect. And she has another meeting, so she has left us already. I have Kirsty, and if I pronounce it wrong, please correct me, but I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. So please, you have the floor now.
You could try. I'm very used to it, so I wouldn't take it personally. So I've been called everything from Kirsty to Christmas and whiskey. So I'm used to it all. And my last name is Øygarden, so that is complicated. I don't have a lot new things to add. My experiences with Border are very similar to what both Valfredo and Fermin talked about earlier. Valfredo talked about crossing the borders to get the right prices. And I live in Portugal, but I'm born and bred in Norway, and we have that happening. In Portugal, we go to Spain, and in Norway, we go to Sweden. But in Norway, the Swedes come to Norway to work because it's better pay. And what Fermin was talking about, the borders between Sweden and Denmark is very similar to the border between Norway and Sweden. which is actually the longest border in Europe, the one between Norway and Sweden. And it's a very open border. It always has been. But we also have a border with Russia. And not a lot of people know that. But Norway also shares a border with Russia, which obviously is a different character, especially now, than the one we share with Sweden. It's a short one. It's about 200 kilometers way up north. There's one border crossing, one place you can cross it. And it's changing. But apart from that, I wanted to add at the end that Norway and Portugal, in the way that they relate to their neighbors and their borders, are very similar, because they are geographically end countries of Europe, one in the north and one in the south. We have a lot of sea, and we have a border to one side, and when we have fish and ocean to the other. And Britain or Brazil as kind of close connections, depending on the two countries. So they have a lot of similar situations between the two countries, although being different. So, but thank you, Quazi. I was very disappointed with the 77 walls, though. I wasn't aware, but it's good to know. Thank you.
César,
Thank you,
sorry.
Kirsti. Sure.
César, sorry, I would like to have a final word. Kirsti,
Yeah.
I was appalled to learn when I was in Portugal that Portugal has not caught in his coast. For many times, Portuguese have expeditions, fishing expedition to Norway.
Yeah, they do.
And they sell cod to all the world.
Yes.
It's a kind of Portuguese dish,
It's
bacalhau,
true.
and so. And
It's true.
and Portugal has not bacalhau. They fish it in Norway.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fact. I would like to remember you about Brazil, for example. You say between Brazil and Paraguay. We have a city called Foz do Iguaçu, which is somehow well known and a touristic destiny because it's very close to the Iguaçu Falls. Well, the two governments built a bridge between Brazil and Paraguay, and we have a whole city there, call it Ciudad del Este. That is it was developed from this movement, these flows of people buying things. It's a very strong community selling all the things. And Ciudad del Este probably would not exist like that if the relation of the flow of people going from here to there was not so strong. That are days or occasions in which that bridge there are delays of 3 to 4 hours to cross the bridge, and has a customs examination and all the things that the bridge that links Foz do Iguaçu with Ciudad del Este. Ciudad del Este is a product of this movement, this tendency to buy things in Paraguay. And just to a final savor of our discussion, this week the social media is publishing a situation that an island that lies exactly between Russia and Canada, where the two continents meet. There is an island in a town there, and they have 12 hours and a half of difference between the two time zones of Russia and Canada. They survive, they coexist with in the same city with 12 hours of difference because of the time zone demarcation or something like that. Just imagine people of the same town, and the one side and the other side, having to deal with this time difference of half a day. So those kind of subjects brings attention, calls attention of all of us for some situation that, like César said, and I am still reinforcing, that are prone to research, to see what happened in this. Quazi Zaman had this marvelous opportunity to hear him and to be aware of this kind of problems. This may be from that fast, more relationship, more, as Joaquin said, and Bruno, the half glass or the full glass, to coexist, to break barriers, to enhance the friendship, to enhance the good relations between all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
César, I
Alfredo.
must leave. I have to cross one border between my state and the state of Goiás. I'm going to Goiânia,
Okay.
and I hope we are just finishing this very nice and profitable meeting.
Thank you very much, Alfredo, and have a safe trip. And thank you to Kirsty Uyharden, something like that. I tried. I would like to ask, before Bruno says something, I would like to ask Hironanjo for a word from the future, because he's 12 hours ahead of me. So please, Hiro.
Well, thank you very much to todos, especially Bruno, meu querido Bruno, tudo bem? This issue of border is very far from my situation, because Japan and all of you know well, Japan don't have a geometrical border. My experience about border is just as someone note now between Brazil and Paraguay. I have been in Brazil for 10 years, about 35 years ago or more. And at that time, I had my parents-in-law in Paraguay. Then I visited many times Paraguay, and I walked that bridge. At that time, the name of the city was Stresnel, you know, and it's why I cannot mention much more about border, but I would like to say one thing. I believe everything has two sides, positive and negative. Japan don't have border. It's good or not. We have two sides. One side, we don't have border, but we are isolated socially and social culture and human relationship in language, culture, and so this lecture made me think about border, not physically, but other side, all aspects. We have borders, and last word from Japan. Japan didn't have borders, but only one country had atomic attack, same border. It means something for future, for internet world communication, and it now we are talking about with you all of the world. It means something Bom, well, my English is so I can speak Portuguese better than English. Sorry, I would like to dream tonight. Okay.
Thank you very much, Hiro, and thank you for being with us that late in Japan and making us think that border is a sign of neighboring. So maybe there's a positive way of looking at borders, because it means we have neighbors, we have someone right next to us. Thank you very much, Hiro. Quazi, I think I will ask you to have some final words, because then I'll ask Bruno to have the final word, because he usually does that for us. So thank you very much.
I see the time is ticking, so I will just use a few kind of keywords that Bruno used. Fear, and I kind of offer you an opportunity, César, as a research kind of coordinator, that I have been trying to kind of research on the displacement movement in terms of fear. And I found that, okay, I presented one paper in Lima, University of Lima, Peru. And that brought me to the very interesting country. When I used the fear to study the displacement, I used the fear as an oscillation, fear as a ups and downs, because if you pass through good space and the bad space, the fear, you can map the fear as a oscillation. If you use that fear oscillation to map the refugees, you can find that the reason for movement has a fear at the origin, and throughout the journey to the new place, they have number of oscillation, and even it doesn't end, because when they reach a new country, there is a new fear of unknown, new fear of alienation. So the fear can be quite good to use as a indicator of social agony, social kind of a transformation. So I just want to thank you, Bruno, to bring that, because fear is a very interesting terminology to kind of measure the mind and social conditions. Okay. Other than, there are many host of other indicators like the economy, then health, but the fear is a very interesting one. If you ask the narrative of a person went through the journey, and you can find that you can easily map that narrative into oscillation of fear. And I must thank everybody to kind of stay 2 hours is kind of longer. I think I used that 2 hours for lecture, if Vicky remember, but I think it's a long for somebody to kind of sit. And I must thank you for listening. And I'll probably get back to you if there is any chance to kind of talk through your ideas, your kind of interpretation of border. I learned from you as well. Okay.
Thank you very much, Quazi. We are all connected via WhatsApp as well. You can always send us questionnaires or messages or something like that. We'll be happy to respond to it. It's a very enthusiasmatic, is that it, theme. And now I would like also to thank you all for staying this long. And it's been really nice meeting you all. And I'll give the floor to Bruno to say the final words of our meeting.
Well, thank you so much, César. I wasn't going to say anything, but Valfredo brought it up, and then Nanjo confirmed it. There is this incredible link between Brazil and Paraguay. And I was fortunate to accompany a study, a design proposal, and now I think it's being built as a second bridge. new bridge, a suspended bridge, designed by Catão Francisco Ribeiro, who's a great bridge engineer in Brazil. He built more than 2,000 bridges in his career. And I accompanied him in the design of a bridge between Salvador, the city of Salvador, and Itaparica. This one between Brazil and Paraguay, and a very interesting proposal he has of an underwater bridge between Calabria and Sicily, which is extremely interesting, also in view of the Norwegian experiences. And so when Quazi showed us that map linking up horizontally the Northern Hemisphere, and looking also at that situation between Alaska and Russia up there, right? Maybe we could do something together or launch this idea that we could connect Alaska with Russia. And how do we do that? There are many ways you can do it. I don't know what the stretch of sea is there. It must be huge. But we can also think of a mega city linking up the two sides, like DAU Oceania's plan for Ecumenopolis in the 40s, 50s, I think, last century. So we could like launch within the network this project, which could be a very schematic idea and which we could all add on to, like set a line contrary to the border, and that line becomes the link between us, and we can all do something on that line, linking. And with our imagination, as César well put it, and imagining like John Lennon suggested, we can maybe show the world, and then we might even get to NASA, that it's possible, that the impossible is possible, and show it, draw it, imagine it. And on that note, I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak again. And I did not mention everyone here, but you're all in my heart. And so thank you very much, César, for this wonderful conduction of the opera tonight, this morning, this afternoon, and yesterday. So we're all together. And the 12.5 hours are meaningless to us.
Thank you all.
God bless.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this. And thank you, Christy, Vicky, Stephen, Maria, Farmin, and I'll explore the complexity with Maria. Hiro, Nanjo, I visited Japan 2-3 times and stayed there. Lovely place. I climbed the mountain Fuji.
Oh yeah, really?
Yes. Yeah, I climbed. It took me like, I started at 9 o'clock, I reached there at 3 o'clock.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Quazi.
When I reached up there, I said, oh, I left a cloud down on several.
I think Hiro is showing us the future, the night.
Oh, right. I thought that Hiro is taking us to the Fuji mountain.
Wow.
It's a dark night.
Yeah, look at it.
I mean, our friends, you know, Bruno, I mean, was from Waseda, the Harada.
Yes, Professor Harada.
Sujo Harada and Furia, Nobuake Furia.
Harada could help us also to make his vertical city a horizontal.
Yeah, 1 kilometer, 1 kilometer.
well, we could stretch it, you know, we could just stretch it across. What is the channel there? It's Bering. What's the name of the channel between Alaska and Russia? Do you know the name?
Yeah,
it's not the Berings.
The Bering Strait.
Berings, yeah.
Bering. B-A-R-I-N-G.
The Bering Strait.
Strait.
Yeah.
Got a different.
No, it's a lovely time I had, and I wish I would be able to kind of organize on another topic. I loved César. Thank you. Bruno, thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody, thank you.